I'm Patty Jane Lay. I'm a member of the Knoxville Bar Association Judicial Committee. And as a member of the committee, we have come up with some questions that have been approved by the Knoxville Bar Association to ask the judicial candidates for this upcoming election cycle. And I have the pleasure of interviewing Judge Kyle Hixson. And it's my understanding, Judge Hixson, that you were a DA here in Knox County for 4 years before going to Nashville to work at the Attorney General's office for a couple of years, and then coming back to the Knox County District Attorney's office as the Deputy District Attorney. You were appointed by Governor Lee to fill the term of criminal court judge, circuit court judge, and were elected in 2020 to that position of criminal court judge for Knox County, Tennessee. So with that introduction, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your qualifications to serve as judge. Now, what do you consider to be your greatest strengths?
Well, Patty, I guess I would say at the end of the day, I'm a hard worker just by my nature. I'm probably not going to be the smartest guy in the room at any time, but I really believe in hard work and preparation. And I hope that people realize that and see that when they appear in my court, that they know if there are pleadings that they filed, I've looked at those thoroughly. I've done my research beforehand because I think that's really important to allow me to hear their arguments, to know what they're talking about, and to make the best decision that I possibly can.
Now, what do you consider makes you qualified to serve as circuit court, criminal court judge for Knox County?
I think when it comes to judges, you're really talking about two things. You're talking about their experience as a lawyer, and I think you're talking about their demeanor, how they interact with people, how they run the docket. And I think to start with the first point there, my experience, I thought at the time back in 2020 when I first sought this position, that my experience helped make me uniquely qualified to serve in this position. I had been a frontline trial court prosecutor for the DA's office. I'd worked on cases at the appellate level with the Attorney General's office. So I was able to sort through transcripts and kind of see some of the issues that can arise in the appellate world once cases leave our jurisdiction. And then during my service as Deputy DA, working alongside General Allen and the work that she and her staff were doing in that office, I thought that combination of experience made me qualified to do the job. I also mentioned a judge's demeanor. I think that's something that is very important. Judges, especially in a criminal court position, I believe need to be even keel, have an ability to really lower the temperature in the room. I thought that my predecessor, Judge McGee, was the perfect example of that and how he treated people, how he showed everyone who appeared before him respect. And that's certainly something that I've tried to carry over into my tenure, and I hope that I've done the past 2 years.
What do you consider your greatest weakness? If any.
Yeah, I have plenty of weaknesses, so it'll be hard to identify one. I tend to be kind of a detail-oriented person, and that can really be a blessing and a curse when you're a criminal court judge, because on one hand, you have to be detail-oriented. You're dealing with very important cases, and you have to make sure that each one gets the attention that it deserves and the detail that it deserves. At the same time, you're a criminal court judge, so you're running a very large docket. We have over 1,000 pending cases in Criminal Court Division 2 at any given moment. So you also have to have the ability to, take the 30,000-foot view about what's happening with your docket and making decisions on a larger level and giving up the micromanagement that, maybe I could afford to do when I was a trial lawyer. Don't really have that luxury now.
All right. what have been the most effective methods for improving court procedures and efficiency?
So one of my main goals when I took office was to make sure that we were moving cases along the docket in a very expeditious manner. These cases need to be heard really as quickly as they can be heard, while still making sure that we're safely safeguarding people's constitutional rights, as well as their due process rights under our Constitution and statutes. But having said that, at the same time, when cases linger for months and years in the justice system, in my mind, inordinate delays really serve to erode the public's confidence that the justice system is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I've really put a strong emphasis on moving cases along the docket, making sure that we're hearing things in a timely fashion. I use status hearing dates. I use pre-trial conference dates. I've utilized scheduling orders on certain cases. And in my experience, that has really helped move these cases along, making sure they're staying on schedule and proceeding to either a trial or a plea, whatever the parties decide to do in any given case.
Thank you. What additional improvements would you recommend for the future of our judicial system?
You know, really, we've been through so much in the past 2 years with the COVID pandemic. That was something that I did not anticipate dealing with when I became a judge. I was sworn in on January 1st, 2020. And by March 13th, just 2.5 months later, in-person proceedings were suspended. And we were dealing with a crisis, not only a public health crisis across the world, but it was also a crisis within our criminal justice system. If there was any silver lining that came out of that, I think, from the pandemic, it was that we were forced to rely upon technology to an extent that we never have been in the past. And I think going forward, that is something that we're going to continue utilizing because now we have that system in place. If you had asked me in February 2020, hey, could you run an entire docket on a computer, on a laptop? I would say absolutely not. But in reality, less than a month or two after that, I was holding court from a laptop in my basement. It wasn't ideal at all times, and I want to emphasize, we will certainly never replace in-person proceedings for a large number of things that we're doing here. But there are a large number of cases and hearings that can be heard virtually. If we're arraigning people, if we're appointing lawyers, if we're having scheduling conferences, things of that nature, there's really no reason that we should incur the expense of transporting inmates all the way out from our detention facility downtown for what is going to amount to a 2-minute hearing. We can do things like that virtually. We can do it on the computer. We can safeguard constitutional rights, do everything that we need to do to keep the case moving along, and at the same time be more efficient and save a lot of taxpayer expense. So I think that is a silver lining that's coming from the pandemic, and that we'll be able to utilize virtual court where appropriate going forward.
What is the biggest challenge you see facing the court?
I still think that it is the pandemic at this point. I know it looks like, hopefully, that we're on the tail end of this thing. Omicron seems to be waning. The numbers seem to be going down. I don't know if we'll get another wave or not. But in the criminal justice system, just by the very nature of what we'll be doing, what we do here, we will still be dealing with the backlogs that were created by the pandemic, that were created by the 2 times that we had to suspend jury trials during the pandemic. And that is going to be a huge challenge going forward, but we can meet it. We just have to keep working hard, chipping away at these cases and keeping the docket moving along.
And one final question. Who are your judicial role models and why?
Okay, well, I grew up always loving Justice Antonin Scalia. I don't think that would surprise anyone for me to tell them that, but I do consider myself a textualist and an originalist. And the fact of the matter is, before Justice Scalia, it wasn't really cool to say that. He really solidified those two judicial philosophies as a solid mainstream part of American jurisprudence. And just his ability to communicate both verbally and in the written word, I've always respected, and certainly miss his contributions to our Supreme Court nationally. On a local level, I would point, it's hard to say because we have so many great judges here, but I would want to point out two people. When I first started prosecuting back under General Nichols, I did a lot of work in Division III in front of Judge Leibowitz. And I learned a lot from Judge Leibowitz, and I was just always impressed. I talked about demeanor and treating people with respect. She really had that down. And I think that everyone in her courtroom, whether they be defendant, victim, defense lawyer, prosecutor, they felt respected and they felt like the judge was listening to them. So I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for her, and we're still good friends to this day. Also, I would talk about my predecessor, Judge McGee. I mentioned earlier, he just had that calm ability to lower the temperature in a room, which is very important in a criminal court. These are stressful cases. They deal with very serious situations. And Judge McGee just kind of had that same manner about him, where he was calm, he was collected, he was reserved, and he ran the courtroom very smoothly and very efficiently. So I think locally, I would definitely point to Judge Leibowitz and Judge McGee.
Thank you. Now, if you would like to say anything to just kind of sum up or do a closing statement, you're free to do that at this time.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Well, I guess my main closing statement would be to thank you and the KBA for doing this. Judicial races can be confusing sometimes to a lot of the citizens. They're more focused on the more political races that we also have on the ballot. And a lot of people say, well, how do I know who to vote for judge? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about the legal system, really. So I think outreaches like this are very important to educate the citizens, to let them know what judges do, why it is important to have experienced judges who are able to run their dockets efficiently. And I think what you guys are doing are a very important part of that. So thank you for doing that. I will be unopposed on the ballot this year, so that is good news, but I certainly still appreciate everyone's support. I'll be on the March 3rd Republican primary ballot and then in the August general election. So I just want to thank everyone who has supported me in the past and who will continue to support me in the future.
Thank you, Judge, for your time today.
Thank you, Patty.